Okay, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, and I'm here with Tonia Moy. She's an architect with Fung Associates. We're talking about community matters. We're talking about building public space in Kaka'ako, which is a trip off two things. One is the article I wrote for the Star Advertiser, which was published yesterday, okay? And the other is we're doing this program on May 21st at Laniakea with a panel of 7. It's one of our all-time
highest number.
It's like an architect's convention, you know? And indeed, Tonia is an architect. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. So honored that you'll have me.
Oh, no, happy to have you here. You know, that was my alternative career, you know, architecture. You know, I still have lingering thoughts about architecture.
But you're smarter than that, right?
No. I do digital media. I don't know. That's it's different. So first, I want to know what it means to be an architect. I mean, what comes off the top of your head when I ask you that question?
A lot of work, and gives you a chance to, I guess, deal collaboratively with a lot of people. It means a lot of collaboration, a lot of work, a lot of trying to be creative, trying to give your client or something, not what they want, but better than what they want. That's always my task, I think, is to give people better than what they thought they wanted, you know, but what they needed.
That's like design thinking, if you've ever been exposed to that. Design thinking is to find out what he really wants. You know, don't take his request.
Yeah.
You have to go behind his request and figure out what he might have asked you had he been fully informed.
Yeah, yeah. What they really need and then what they want.
It's complicated, isn't it? I mean, there's so many possibilities, so many places to, well, you have lots of choices to make.
Yes, yeah. So sometimes the more constraints you have, the easier or more creative your design comes out, you know, even though there's so codes and all that issues just actually help you.
Can I ask you a hard question?
Uh-oh, okay.
You know, I wrote about this to some limited degree in my article, but it's that if I walk around Hawaii now, I don't see the ethnic, which I'd like to see. I don't see the old, what do you call it, Hapahauli kind of, you know, in the 30s, all that stuff in Waikiki by the sea, I call it, yeah. With the romance that brought people here from all over the world. I don't see that. I see eclectic. I see badly maintained. I see nobody wants to really shine in terms of his building or his property. It's just make a buck. Now, am I wrong? Tell me how wrong I am.
I hope you're wrong, but I think that is a hard question, by the way. But I think that what happened in the 60s is a very romanticized image of Hawaii. So a lot of people were kind of that Elvis, I like to call it the Elvis Presley Hawaii,
Wonderful.
right? So
Okay.
it's kind of, you know, the tourist version, the version of the veterans who had come back, you know, who had fought here or was stationed here and they go back to the mainland. And that's their vision of Hawaii, I think. And then in the 70s and 80s, of course, this is my version of what's happening, right?
Okay.
70s and 80s, there was a big Hawaiian Renaissance where people went back to what's, you know, like more, the more culturally, the true Hawaiian culture.
Yeah.
And I think the 60s stuff kind of offended them because it was, you know, like.
It was from somewhere else.
Yeah, it's kind of this tiki idolization kind of a view of architecture. So I think a lot of people stepped back and thought, okay, maybe that's not so good. But, you know, it is a part of our history, and I personally think they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
that era of architecture is pretty cool. But
That was Ossipoff.
Ossipoff did a lot.
I mean, he was relatively successful, not all the time, but relatively speaking, he was pretty good.
And Ossipoff didn't necessarily do kind of that Elvis style, but he did do a lot of modern take on things that really sort of belonged in Hawaii, I think. You know, it was,
He captured something.
He captured probably more the climate and kind of a little bit of the culture, but not like any particular.
It was looking from outside into the culture. He interpolated it somehow through his own music and his own.
And I think mainly he really geared to the place and the climate of Hawaii, right? I mean, his things are very well suited. Yeah. They're sited well. They capture they capture views very well. If you don't have a view, he'll put a courtyard in there for you to have a view. So, you know, it's a very indoor-outdoor kind of feeling, which is very appropriate for Hawaii's climate. And then I think if a particular client had any kind of maybe interest in Japanese, or then you know, he managed to, he lived in Japan for a little while too, I think. So he managed to get some of those little details in too. So it's always a collaboration between, you know, owner, architect.
But it's, you know, to me, it's a self-image too. If you look around the city, you see that the streets are not well laid out. Sometimes there's only one street to get to a given place, and if that street is stuck, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You look at the sidewalks, well, sometimes there are, and sometimes there aren't. You look at the power, you know, the electric poles. Sometimes there are, too often there are, sometimes there aren't. I mean, I don't have a sense of uniformity, either in the way the city's laid out or in the architecture that fills it in. And the University of Hawaii is probably a good metric on all this, because I don't know where they. I mean, you know, they always say if you don't like the project, if you're an architect and you know the project is a failure, jump off the roof, right? I think there are a lot of people jumping off the roof in University of Hawaii.
Oh no. Well, I think there is definitely a lack of master planning for the, you know, most of the campuses and over the city. And even when they had a master plan, somehow they just never followed it, you know.
Sure. The exception swallows the rule.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's in the master plan, but.
So what are the, if you wanted to make, we're going to do Sim City here today.
Okay.
If you wanted to make a better city going forward, what would you, I mean, my word was utopia, an architectural utopia. What would you do?
In Hawaii?
In Honolulu.
In Honolulu? Wow, you're really getting hard here. But I think one of the most wonderful things about Hawaii is the, you know, kind of the mix of culture and mix of different financial background and everything. If that can all be put together. Actually, I've got this thing that I've been meaning to do and write an article myself on what I think we should start a whole new trend called pigeon architecture. Like there's pigeon language, right?
Interesting idea.
That Hawaii is just this mix, but yet everyone can kind of understand each other, and that pigeon language is an outcome of this different thing. And so I would like to see some kind of pigeon architecture come out of this whole, you know, understanding of but somehow it has to all work together, right? And you know, it's hard to try and get a client to agree to it. But anyway.
Well, I mean, architecture is different now because it's high tech. You have machines that draw the way, you know, you used to draw yourself with slide rules and stuff. You know, what are I forget those things.
The ones that go. Oh, that's pretty new actually.
Oh,
but the
okay, all right.
Parallel bar.
But I mean, if I said, you know, make me a structure, you would get on a computer and you wouldn't really have to draw anything except on the computer.
Well, you know, I think maybe that's true with the real younger generation coming out of school now, but I think the people like who have been practicing for maybe the last 20 years or so, still we have to draw.
Oh, you draw?
So the first pass is always sort of a sketch, and then do it on computer to make sure it's the right scale, and then sketch again. I mean, I do.
Interesting. An iterative process.
Yeah. I kind of need that hand-eye coordination.
But you have to have a sense of art, color and form, and all those artistic elements, right? Do you have training in that?
Well, yeah. I mean, not everybody does, but we all have studio classes, which you have to take color in architecture. Yeah, which you have to take color and design. You know, design principles and. But you know, personally, I actually have a fine arts degree as well.
You do?
Yeah.
What's your favorite kind of fine art?
What was my major, which is totally, I actually majored in weaving.
Weaving?
Yeah, this was the 70s, right? So it's kind of.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, big in the 70s.
With textile arts, weaving.
I remember this. So, and you went from weaving to buildings.
Well, actually, for 10 years, I did craft fairs. locally, I would do craft fairs, which was weaving textile arts, and then after 10 years, you know, it was like, I think I need a job.
Oh, that's great though, because I want to explore for a minute with you
Okay.
about what it means to live in a world where everything is design, where your primary interest is design. You look around, you see things that are not good design. You want to make the design better. You see it in the language. You talked about Pidgin, right? You see the languages of design. You see the elements of design. And you're always interpreting them, trying to appropriate them
Right.
to how, the best design for you. And am I right? You evolve as a person who appreciates design.
Right.
Your taste, like the artist of great artists, Pablo Picasso, you change over time through your life.
Sure.
So what has it been like?
Actually, messy.
Messy, okay.
But because you tend to just collect all these ideas, collect everything you see, like, and it kind of ends up messy. But that's an interesting concept. But it's kind of true where people in design were always looking up. I think architects tend to look up a lot, but we're always looking at things and going, I wonder why they did that. I mean, and because I have a historic kind of a background, historic architecture background, I'm always wondering, why is it done that way? I try not to be too critical of others because there's always a reason, right? Even if it's something plain and, like seemingly uninteresting, there's a reason the person did it that way.
So you want to understand
I'm always trying to understand.
But it doesn't necessarily mean you like it or it's consistent with your artistic taste.
Right.
You want to take a short break, okay? It's Tonia Moy. She's an architect with Fung Associates. We're here on Community Matters because community does matter. And we're talking about building public spaces in Kaka'ako. We're going to get to that right after this break. You'll see. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday. Aloha.
Aloha, welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. My name is Josh Green. I'm the host of a program called Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm a physician. I work in the emergency department on the Big Island. I also serve in the state senate, which, please don't hold that against me, doesn't detract from my television program. We speak about all the big healthcare issues in the state. We get together on Tuesdays from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we try to talk about the most important issues in healthcare. This is a terrific venue for people to learn about healthcare. There are many programs on this station. We broadcast it later, not just on the internet, but also on OC16. Thanks for joining us. Please be informed healthcare consumers.
Right, they were talking about me.
Okay, here we are. We're having a great discussion during the break. We always have great, you guys, you should envy us having these great discussions. Okay, that's Tonia Moy. She's an architect with Fung Associates. Been out of architectural school, what, a dozen years? More?
More.
Okay.
20, let's see, my daughter's 23 years.
Okay, and architectural schools was UH, right up there on University Avenue. And we're here in Community Matters, and we're talking about building public spaces in Kaka'ako. And it's driven off the notion of we need more public spaces. Let's make that an assumption. And there's a question about whether we can achieve that for various economic and political reasons. But if everybody rose up and said we want more public spaces, then we would have more public spaces. And if you don't care, say nothing. And then you won't have any public spaces. Trust me. Okay, so we're making the assumption that people have risen up and they have caused whatever landowner, whether it be one of the big landowners down there or the city itself, or the state. The state runs, the state has a fair amount of land down there. Or it's a condemnation. We don't do much condemnation here. I don't know why. We should do much more. In the rest of the country, when they need something for the public use, they condemn it, they get it,
Right.
it's easy. And you pay the value
Yeah.
and you're done and you have it right away. It's a great law. We don't do it much. Okay, so, but we get it for you. We're gonna find a way. We're gonna twist arm, we're gonna
Okay.
buy it, we're gonna, sell bonds to get it, we're gonna condemn, whatever we do. Okay, this is going to be somewhere in the middle of Kaka'ako.
Okay.
And I don't know, how much land do you want for your public space, Tonia?
I would want, well, minimum 1 city block, but I think maybe 3 city blocks would be nice.
It'd be the Central Park of Kaka'ako.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
it
that
could
be
be.
wonderful? I can see it, well, in the outline. We're gonna
Right.
explore further.
Okay.
Okay.
That'd be great. I think there's gonna be all these high rises that they're gonna need some kind of open
They
space.
really are.
Yeah, and those little pocket parks, well, they're kind of nice to have here and there. I think one big space. Where are the kids gonna run around?
Yeah, they gotta be able to run
Yeah,
safely.
right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm starting to get excited about this. Okay, so it's a city block, big.
Okay.
And, okay, now, I give it to you as Greenfield.
Okay.
What are you gonna do with it to make it a magnet, to make it, attract people, to give them joy, entertainment, delights of every kind, to give them a place of respite in a madding world? What do you put there?
I need my pencil. No, but I just, but I think definitely Kaka'aku's gonna need some trees, some green, some trees, and of course everybody loves a public space where you can have your coffee in the morning or have your cocktail in the evening to sit around. And if you have family or if you have dogs and you want them to run, wouldn't it be great to be able to sit there and they can run there while the adults can enjoy their cocktail, or and because it's Hawaii, I think although like there's a lots of great public spaces that are all concrete, like San Marcos Square and all those places, and they're lively. I think because Hawaii's a little warmer than other places, I think. And just being Hawaii, I think we ought to have some, like, instead of maybe arcades, we can have tree canopies going, and it would be.
Oh, the kind where the trees bend over
Yeah,
together.
and then
Like in the
you
road to
have-
Kaloa, the road to Kauai, and a beautiful,
Right, you
yeah,
have this
fabulous,
nice tree canopy.
like heaven, actually.
Yeah, so that'll be our arcade, would be a tree canopy, and I love. One of the things I really like about Hawaii is that whole Mauka Makai corridor thing. So it would be great if we could see both Mauka and Makai in this open space.
So you take, I love the canvas idea here. So you say, well, we're gonna point this thing, Mauka Makai. So if it's a rectangle, and it could be a square too, but, and one end is the Mauka, one end is the Makai. And we're gonna say to the buildings and the powers that be, keep the buildings really low.
Close by. Well, it would be nice if it. I guess like they at least had a low step down, and then maybe in the back it can be high. But you have to have your cafes, right?
Yeah,
around there.
yeah.
So.
A step down. What is a step down?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like a portion of the building lower, and then in the back.
It's okay to make it higher.
Gets it higher. as
Okay,
it
so it
goes
sort of
back.
dips
Yeah.
into the.
That would be-
Okay, now
that
let's
would be
talk
very
about the
cool.
cafes, I mean, what I get from you is my own experience in Europe. Why do I like Europe mostly? It's because I can find a cafe which will offer me a glass of wine and the Herald Tribune newspaper, which is only printed outside the country, interestingly, okay, in English. And I can sit there and watch the crowd go by and drinking my glass of wine all day and feeling Gemütlichkeit, happy as I can possibly be. Now, how are you going to make that happen in Honolulu?
Well, for one thing, you have to have the cafes, but and you have to have the. I guess I'm not positive of what laws there are out there, but why we don't have more of those kind of sidewalk cafes now. I think it has to do with what laws we have, that they don't allow them into public places. So of course that would have to, they would have to have the laws to allow
I'll tell you a
that.
short story. I had a client who was a big building in Waikiki, and I said to the client, you should have a restaurant that spills out onto the setback, like they used to. The Jolly Roger was there in the 60s.
Okay.
and it was open, you know, and tables were outside. I could not understand why it disappeared, and there was nothing to replace it. Even in Manhattan, on I want to say 6th Avenue, Avenue of the Americas.
Okay.
There are sidewalk restaurants everywhere in Manhattan now, and for them, it snows half the year. You know, we have perfect weather, but we don't have sidewalk.
I know.
Why is that? What are we missing? But anyway, you know, in those days, the worst. So I said to the client, why don't you put, you know, a restaurant in there that will have tables out, chairs outside where we can sit and have our glass of wine and read the newspaper and watch the people go by. Yeah. He said, great idea, Jay. And they then set about doing that.
Yeah.
And it took them 2 years, okay, and a lot of money, because the government required them to change the whole setback. They had to build features, affirmatively build features, because somebody wanted them to build stuff, which were really not helpful or important. They went through a lot of money and 2 years of permit experience before they could do that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really too bad, because it sent a message.
Right, that it's not valued, but
Yeah,
I think it is. I think almost everyone would agree that it is valuable.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so not only do you need the laws to allow people into public space with alcohol, that's another thing, right?
Yeah. Alcohol and a table in the middle of the street, alcohol,
Right.
yeah.
And you know, it would be a great space for like Eat the Street can happen there, or you know, like fairs can happen there. So it has to have enough empty space for that. For those
So
bigger
I'm beginning to
events.
get the outline. So we have the square, okay?
Yeah.
We have Malcolm Mackay is stepped
Yes.
up. We have some coffee shops, cafes along the sides.
Right.
Not in the
right.
square, but alongside
Along
the
side,
square.
so they feed into the.
And that means the streets alongside the square are not driving streets.
Right.
They're
yeah.
walking streets. Ooh, I'm liking
Or the streets can be on right outside. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then we allow these cafes or restaurants to serve wine. We don't make it hard for them.
Right.
And then so you can come down. You know, the thing is to be magnetic, to get the millennials
Right.
to come in
Right.
and take possession of a place
Right.
like this.
Eat the Street is really crowded all the time. I think, you know, you have a few events there and.
So we could take we could take some of this along the sides, and we could leave it for the food trucks, right?
That would be
Eat
fun.
the Street food
Yes,
truck, have
that
them
they
come
can
in.
just park along the side.
It's
for these
pigeon
events.
design.
Pigeon design, yes.
Okay, how about in the center? What do you do in the center?
The center, you know, because Hawaii is warm, I think we do have to have the tree canopies somewhere, right? So maybe along the side, but we need a lot of open space because the kids have to run around, the dogs have to run around.
Sounds
I
like
think.
Central Park, doesn't it? A lot of
Yeah, I
free-form
guess, yeah.
open space. Or as Michael Kimmelman was the architecture critic for the New York Times and is involved in this big movement called the public space movement, public space project. He says it's got to be, maybe you know more about this, it's got to be ambiguous space.
So people.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm just guessing here, but I would guess it means the space where people can put in their own, where they can put their own activity in there.
Do what they want.
Right.
They're part of the design process
Yes.
on a daily basis.
Yeah. So if you want to walk your dog there, you can. If you want to kick a ball around with your kids, you can.
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to just sit there and have a picnic, that would be.
Also,
under a
it's a
tree.
canvas, and you paint
Yeah.
it, and you leave it ambiguous. That is not really necessarily locked into
Right,
anything.
right,
So
right.
people can do what comes to mind.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
yeah.
So the streets for the food trucks can also be maybe they can have a craft fair along there.
Crafts fair.
Yes.
You know, I lived in Manhattan when I was in law school, you know, and this is a long time ago. And what I loved about Manhattan were these little stands. They would close a block. You know, why doesn't this happen here? Close a block, and all the craftspeople would come in, and they would occupy that block with their stands, and they would sell you all kinds of great stuff, really good quality, handicraft stuff,
Right.
weaving.
Even weaving in those days.
We can do that, you know?
Yeah, you know, and there are some craft fairs that happen in Hawaii, but there's no place that people can think ahead to, like on a weekly basis.
No, it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's this Art and Flea that kind of has picked up a lot for at that night market. They do the night market.
The night market, the same
Yeah.
woman who does the night market in Eat the Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know. I didn't even
It's
know.
the same
that.
idea.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of a craft fair thing, right, too.
So we let them in. We don't do a lot of regimentation here. It's a free form.
Yeah.
If you want to come down, and it's okay to engage in commercial processing. It's okay to
Yeah.
sell stuff. You want to sell ice cream cones, it's okay.
Yeah.
Cotton candy, it's okay.
Yeah,
All
right.
that.
Yeah, right. Everything people really want.
They really do want it, you know. And Europe is filled with that, you know,
I know.
everywhere. It's part of the street scene.
Yep, selling those neon balls that they're flying all over the place.
Anything and
Yep,
everything, yeah.
Yep. And even
God,
if-
it's so foreign to the way we are now.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, those street vendors, they have them in Waikiki, I think.
Yeah, but they offend people. And I don't know if it's right or wrong, but they're there to, let's talk about that after the break.
Okay.
And we'll decide whether we want it in our park or not.
Okay.
Okay? All right?
Sounds good.
Okay, that's Tonia Moy. She's with Fung Associates. She's an architect, and we're exploring her design process here today. We're building
have a
public
park.
space right now in front of you in Kaka'ako here on Community Matters. We'll be right back.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at ThinkTech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
You did it again. You missed the discussion during the break, and I'm sorry for that. Exploring new issues. Anyway, that's Tonia Moy. She's with Fung Associates. It's a local architecture firm. They do not do public spaces.
No, we don't.
What do you do at Fung Associates?
Well, we'll do anything.
Okay, all right.
But we do a lot of historic architecture because, you know, that's sort of my background is in historic architecture.
That's because of your art background. Because historic architecture it's very aesthetic.
But because I'm historic, no. It's because, well, I used to work at the State Historic Preservation Office before working at Fung Associates, so that's
So you
10
know
years
about
I
historic homes then.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's such a battle actually. We don't have
it is.
enough of them. We should have more.
But can I just put in a little plug for historic features and historic preservation?
Please, please.
Is that you know, I grew up in the 70s, 60s, 70s, right? And so it was a time of education was kind of that. You don't have to know what they did, just why they did it, kind of a thing, right? That was our whole education. So I was never really into or didn't really know that much about history, and it kind of continued that way through college in my art degree. But when I took architecture, all of a sudden, history, to understand why something is built the way it was, it just became really just, you know, made it so interesting to me. History became so interesting to me through architecture. So.
Example.
Example, oh dear. Like I just, you know, like just looking at a building, even if it's, we can take Financial Plaza, which I did.
Okay, well that's where we met.
Yeah,
Financial Plaza.
right.
The background story on that is that Tonia was part of the AIA, American Institute for Architects, and its April Architecture Month program. And it was a walk around downtown, which they do every year. and they have stations, and different docents
Yes.
are at the stations. They will explain to you what this building is about. It's really interesting, and Tonia was a docent in front of Financial Plaza Pacific, and it was and I knew then I had to have her on the show.
Which I'm not really that much of a public speaker, but anyway, so, you know, like take that building, you know, like to understand what the thinking behind it, like what modernism, what speared the modernism growth, you know, to learn that, you know, like how they exposed everything, and it was all about the honesty of material. So, you know, the philosophy behind it. And then you start to appreciate things a little bit more than just go, because I mean, a lot of people go, oh, that's a brutal building, you know, but it was brutalism was for a reason, you know, and then if you understand that, I think you kind of appreciate everything. And so that's how the history ties into the.
It goes back to the language of architecture.
There
You're
we go.
listening to the language, and you're reading the mind or minds of the people who actually did it.
Or
Why
trying
did they
to.
do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could be wrong,
Yeah,
too.
yeah, that's right. Exactly.
But it's fun to figure it out.
Yes,
anyway.
it is.
Yeah, but not to dwell on it, but Financial Plaza of the Pacific, you know, if you saw a tumbleweed blowing across that square, it wouldn't surprise you, because nothing ever happens there. And you would not want to incorporate the design elements from that, however brutal they are, into our special project here.
Into our special project. No, that because it's a different kind of a space, totally different kind of a space. Well,
It says bank.
yeah.
It says
It
capital.
does. It does.
says-
It says, come in, bank, and leave.
That's what it said, right.
Leave
Yeah.
your money.
There's certain things, you know, that are just the opposite. Food, you know, places to sit,
Right.
little cover,
different,
somehow
yes.
tree cover or some,
Yes.
you know.
I mean, they have a water feature, which is that, and actually, when I was doing that talk, a couple of people came up afterwards in different tours, and some of them remember that big art disc used to spin.
Oh,
So it was a more interactive space before.
that would be better.
Yeah.
But
So,
they decided not to spin it.
yeah.
Oh, thank you for that. I remember that. You know, and there was the Rhonda building, a restaurant down
Oh.
was it 1221 Kapiolani at the Ala Moana Center?
Oh, the Laurent, the one
Laurent
that spins?
actually
Yeah.
turned.
Yeah.
And one
I
day it
know.
stopped turning.
I know.
And that was the end of that. Now if you stop someone in the street, you said, do you know that building turns? They said, I never heard of that.
Yeah.
Don't believe you. And that's an
know,
example of somebody who thought of something, which was probably pretty creative and advanced, avant-garde at the time,
Yeah.
but it completely failed. It stopped and nobody wanted to pursue it.
Yeah. Nobody wants to put in the money to maintain it, I
Yeah,
guess.
at the end, it's economics.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I mean, I would say, you can give me your comment, I would say that Financial Plaza of the Pacific, as it stands today, might as well be the Gobi Desert. Nothing happens there.
So, you know, it could be, that's not what they want to happen anyway, so.
Yeah, okay, right. It's an intention
Yeah,
thing.
so it's an
So,
intention
but it would
thing,
be very different than
Yes,
this.
no, because this one, we would want it to be active, right? We want people to come in and
Okay,
use it how
paths.
they want.
We want
Okay.
paths. What, green grass?
Green
We want
grass.
paths. Are the paths straight? Are they curved? What kind of design would you put on the paths?
Ooh. I would wait 6 months and see where people walk
What a wonderful idea that is.
and put paths there.
Yes, a great idea. Okay, what about benches and chairs and places to sit?
Oh yeah, definitely. You definitely need benches, and you know, water feature. That is nice. Maybe water feature on the ocean side, or if there's a noisy side, you might want to use it for white noise. It's kind of nice to have.
Interesting.
And then, but you know, like you said, it would be great to have people just running around and
Yeah, Central Park,
yeah.
you know? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's-
Central Park still has a magic.
It's so well used.
Yeah, it
Winter
is.
time too, and people are.
Yeah. I wrote that about that in my article, and I mentioned Central Park, of course, because the brilliance of that 150 years ago, and it's still totally
Yeah.
brilliant. Well, I forget his name, but he was a
Yeah,
wonderful designer.
Yeah, I I know his name.
It'll come back. It'll come back.
Olmsted.
Yeah, yes, right. Then in New York, the South Street Seaport, another example of restaurants and an area on the water. There's no greenery there, but
No.
it's totally magnetic.
Yeah. Although after Hurricane Sandy, I don't know if it's been brought back up again.
Oh, I didn't know, I haven't been there.
Yeah, I went there a couple of years ago after
That would be
yeah,
tragic.
it was kind of
Too bad.
a lot of empty.
It was
places.
so vital
Yeah.
back in the day, yeah. And then the Battery, I don't know how that fared with Hurricane Sandy, at the Battery, at the southern tip of Manhattan.
Yeah.
That was so alive because the ferries were coming in and out. There was all this food and parks and pigeons. It was, they gotta have pigeons, I mean the real kind.
We'll have both pigeons.
But these places draw people by the thousands, and they stay there for a while, and,
Yeah.
and it's a sweet moment to be there. That's what we have to achieve. And then in New York, I was telling you, between the firebreak streets, there's always a park. It's a full block park, and I mean, whoever thinks of this stuff, they thought about it a long time ago. It's just lovely, and it could be gated so that at night maybe you close it. But during the day, you're very European, there's a lot of benches, and dogs can come in, and people and kids can play, and the whole thing is,
Their lunch.
it's an island in the storm.
Yeah. And like New York, people work and live in the same areas, so, those things are very well used.
Yeah. So, lighting, what do you think about lighting? And I should attach that to security, because as we discussed
Yeah.
earlier, there will be a security issue, not because any of the criminals necessarily, but because the homeless may find this park too. And it's a problem.
Though, if you have those cafes that are open till pretty late, when you have your wine sipping public listening to little
Little music.
quartets here and there.
Oh, yes, right.
Or,
White and Eisenstein.
Yeah.
A little string quartet, tear your heart out.
I know, or even even if you allow high school kids to be practicing their quartets, or there, and then they can be getting tips from people. Wouldn't that be fun? I would totally give money to these
I
kids.
would too,
playing.
just to have them come
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
And so, that alone, I think if you have these lights coming from the sides, that should help enliven it a little bit. I would hate to see really blaring park lights.
Yeah,
in
no,
here,
it would be low lights, right?
Yeah, so
Not
maybe
too
in
high.
the trees, in the tree canopy.
Yeah.
You can have some light.
Just
there.
enough to keep it
Yeah.
visible.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't put a fence around this at all. No fences.
No. How will people get in from there?
Yeah, and leave it open
places.
all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
I
Would you
hope
put
it
Would you
be
put a
okay.
policeman there? Only if it's necessary.
Yeah.
Take that 6-month period,
Yeah.
the look-see
I'd
period,
see.
and then check it out.
Right, and see how it goes. I mean, you probably would have security guards wandering through all the cafes and.
Yeah,
Anyway.
private, yeah.
Yeah.
What about Speaker's Corner? Scott Wilson, the president of the AIA Honolulu,
Uh-huh.
talks about this kind of thing. It's part of a democracy, right?
Okay.
To have people come and engage in conversation with their friends, people they know, also people they don't know,
Yeah.
and talk about political issues, have face-to-face. Face-to-face is better than social media, really.
Of course.
And so if you can have a Speaker's Corner like in Hyde Park, right, in London, there's a little place dedicated to
Right.
saying whatever you want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
We can have a Speaker's Corner. We have one here in the studio,
You do?
Really, I'll show you where it is.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
That would be kind of interesting. That would be fun. I mean, I think it's an ambiguous space that you would see how it works out. I would have no problem with it at all. I would think it would be very interesting.
It reminds me of the High Line, the High Line,
Yeah.
Ambiguous in the sense that you want to go to read a book,
Yeah, right.
You want to go to play with your kids, do that.
Yeah.
You want to ride a bike, do that. It all goes.
Yeah.
It's genius that way. You want to look at the horticulture, you can do that.
Yeah. Add artwork. Yeah.
So my last question for you, Tonia, is assuming that the dream park is built, in that size, and then that shape and that.
Got good cafe.
Right, the power of it is just staggering. you know, but assuming that it gets built, how will it affect the design or the urban quality of our city? What would it do? It would take a lot to do it, we know, economically, politically, but how would it affect life in the city?
Well, I think it would make it more desirable to live close by. I would hope that around that area, it could have people could afford to live in that area. I don't know if that will happen, but and hopefully it'll bring children and other, you know, all types of people together. I mean, that would be the ideal, if it would bring not just one type of person, but, you know, all the varied people that we have in Hawaii together. I mean, even if there's a few homeless.
You know, it's a coexistence thing.
You know, it
isn't
would be kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, you could actually get to talk to a homeless
Yeah.
person. That would be a real trip,
That would
you know.
be, yeah.
And kids, they could get to talk to them too. And,
Sure.
you know,
And that speaker's corner, the homeless guy could be at the speaker's corner, or yeah.
bringing the
The
city
kids,
together,
that-
bringing the people together.
I think that would make it totally the most successful, if it
Ah.
could just bring a varied.
From your lips to God's ears, a utopia right here
Yes.
among us.
There we go.
We can do this. Thank you, Tonia.
Oh,
It's
you're
been a great
welcome.
creative discussion.
Thank you.
So we'll do it again on May 21. And Tonia's going to be in the panel of 7 we have. It's a wonderful panel. And we're going to be at Laniakea. If you want to sign up on thinktechhawaii.com. You'll be glad you did. You'll hear this kind of discussion for an hour and a half. You'll never forget. Improve your life. Thank you, Tonia.
Thank you.